They say clothes maketh the man, or something along those lines. I think we need to update that statement, as a matter of fact. Do you think outfits and clothing determine your character, your personality? Well, in today's video, brought to you by Portrait Workshop, we're going to find out. Hello and welcome to today's special episode on character creation. We're working with Portrait Workshop to flesh out your characters, to bring them to life. Now, we're looking at the equipment, the gear, and the clothing that will go into your character. Last time we looked at what the facial features had to say about your character. Now we're looking at what kind of gear is important for you to have to express your character's personality. Now, I've got a stock standard orc here. I am using Portrait Workshop. It's on my phone. As you can see, I've got it connected to the computer, so apologies if I look down every now and again. I've got to drive this thing. Now, when it comes to gear, the first place that you start is, of course, what is the profession of your character? And do they showcase it? Do they flaunt it? So this burly orc that I've got going here, I kind of like the look of him, but I think he should have some kind of different outfit. But what is he? What is he? Is he a mage? Is he a warrior? Is he a jester? Is he a chef? We have so many different options. Now, obviously, as we're scrolling through Portrait Workshop, we get all the different options that come through. But what has our character sheet said? What have we actually chosen for our orc? And I think a very good place to start is let's put him in this gambard, or it looks like a gambesson, I should say, not a gambard, a gambesson. And then let's go through to the armor. Now, the armor is absolutely critical because armor is the huge amount of resources during the medieval period went into making armor that fit, that was customized, and that kind of made sense for the wearer and also showcased the wearer's attitude. Now, if we look at our orc here, we've got some plate mail armor coming through there. We've got a cloak that hides the armor. This might be more appropriate if the character is a little bit more subtle. Perhaps they're a bodyguard and they need to follow their master around without being too flashy or showy. So the cloak option that's presented here, this works really well because we've got a little bit of chainmail coming through, but the cloak is hiding the majority of it. So this is an orc who is now, as far as my interpretation would be concerned, a sophisticated bodyguard, someone who knows how to handle himself. Maybe that's not exactly what we want. Maybe we want an orc who's a little bit more, let's say, feral. So here's an orc, we've got fur. The moment you start including fur into your character portrait, you're starting to create a sense, of an older time period. We don't really use fur so much nowadays, except in the glamorous sense, whereas in the olden days it was used primarily as an insulation tool, as well as a display of power. Here we've got lots of fur being shown, plus that heavy, crude stitching. Why is heavy, crude stitching important? Well, the heavy, crude stitching that this guy has got, it's indicating a lack of sophistication. It indicates a lack of development in terms of this is probably handmade. Today, we relish handmade as something of absolute value, and machine-made is not so great. In the past, however, handmade meant that you couldn't afford to hire a professional tailor. So again, let me stop. Sorry, I'm bouncing the picture. Again, when you look at this kind of armor, you're going, this is much more what we would expect an orc to wear in terms of an orcish barbarian type of style. What other options do we have? The moment we start to go into outfits like this, suddenly now this is a noble orc. The armor is refined, it's sophisticated, the drape of the cloak is one that is of style, it's bespoke in terms of its layout. It really is pushing this emphasis that here is a sophisticated orc lord, perhaps, who's now out of their space. So I'm not entirely sure where we want to go with this particular character. Maybe we want to go back to the more barbaric kind of look. Maybe the shoulder pads were too much. I kind of like them, to be perfectly honest with you. But again, here's that rough stitching, just to give you a comparison between the two. So as I'm going through all of these different options, they've got so many now. Let's go back to our original fur kind of cloak, armor, I should say. What else do we need to add to this portrait? Because the portrait is not yet complete. Well, let's add in some gear. So when we go to, let's go to gear. So when we go to gear, that is now starting to indicate the weapon that this individual might use. Portrait Workshop has, of course, just brought up a whole lot of staves and books and things, and now we start to get to some more interesting ones. I do particularly like the one that's got 2 tankards of beer. That's a very, very, very strong indicator of what this character likes. They like to drink beer, or perhaps act as barmen. I'm not entirely sure. Let's go and have a look for something else. There is an interesting one. Look at this blade here. It's not a refined blade. This is something that's been hammered out of heavy, heavy iron. It's, again, not sophisticated. That's what we're looking for as we're trying to drive this very barbaric kind of feel. So that sits very well in terms of our look, I think, anyway. I'm just scrolling through to see if we have any other options. This is another nice option. Why is it a nice option? Again, do you see the power that adding in that fur brings? The spear tip is particularly sophisticated. It's particularly well forged, which could indicate a culture that's dedicated to making good weaponry. But that fur, that lining on the actual spear is really strong. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the gear color, because if that fur could be, if that fur could pop out more, that would be brilliant. So we look down here and we're seeing all the different types of armor that are coming through, and look at this. Suddenly this fur is going to pop out because it's slightly different in color and in texture from the armor behind. That's very red armor. This could be now a very proud clan that are showcasing themselves. They're kind of showing off a little bit. Again, just so many different options that we can scroll through. I'm not going to spend too much time on color theory. So for now, let's say that that's kind of working for us. Now we need to go and look at, do they have a shield attached? What Portrait Workshop will do is it will add shields behind the character portrait, because now they have the spear in front. And so to put a giant shield in front of your character is going to hide their face. I'm not convinced any of those shields particularly scream to me barbaric orc. I know there are lots of options, and there are still more options coming through with Portrait Workshop. That one I think is okay for now. We can then go in and add accessories. Let's accessorize, as they say. What kind of accessories do we have? Well, we've either got a cross belt, which I think is actually quite spiffy. It just adds a little bit of detailing, a little bit of asymmetry, which is so important when you're designing portraits. A little bit of asymmetry gives us a little bit of detailing there. We could add in arrows if we really wanted to, if he's kind of a bow, arrow, spear kind of orc. But I really do kind of like that. I think that's looking pretty good, as a matter of fact. If I look at that orc, we definitely have a sense of who they are and what they are. We've got a little bit of the detailing in there on the armor. And what that does is such a big impact from where it originally started to where it is now, I think is pretty impressive and very indicative of the character. These are the kind of questions you should be asking yourself. What is their culture? What is their attitude? What do they want to present to the world? Is it cloak and dagger? Or is it more very demonstrative, bright armor, very big, bold statements being made in terms of the look of the character? These are questions that need to be going through your head as you're designing your character. Not just a case of, oh, it's a man or it's a woman or whatever we so choose, but also now let's start to actually look at the character in terms of what they choose to wear and what they choose to show us. Clothing is so very important. And of course, if you didn't know this, most of our conversation, most of our interaction with other people, when it's safe, of course, is through visual cues, through body language. 70%, they say, come through body language. And recently I was learning that within a tenth of a second, as a human, when you look at another person's face, you've judged a whole bunch of criterion almost subconsciously about what you believe of that particular character. And the clothing is so much an important factor on that. Is it slimming? Is it fattening? Is it a good choice? Is it bad choice? Is it scruffy? Is it rough? Is it homemade? Is it unique? Is it chic? All those kinds of things need to be included in your character portrait if you want to make a truly stunning character portrait. Today's video was brought to you by Portrait Workshop, the company that makes this wonderful phone-based app that allows you to randomly generate thousands and thousands of portraits. They're still in beta, so they are adding daily. We've just got half-orcs added to the mix, so we can create some really interesting half-orc characters. The software is currently available for purchase for $25. Now, it might seem a little steep. However, that gets you everything that will be in the final launch of Portrait Workshop when it is finally released later on. If you don't purchase it now, you can wait until it has been released, and then you can purchase each item as you so choose. If you want to add in the Orc pack or the Elf pack, it's microtransactions moving forward. However, I should warn you, getting in now will save you several dollars when the final package is released. And having the option of generating just thousands and thousands and thousands of portraits literally at the tap of a button when you are running your game, it's so much more powerful to be able to literally say to your players, you see a dark-haired elf walking towards you wearing quite rustic armor and looking fiercely intense in terms of their countenance. It's a really powerful tool and certainly will enhance your game whether you're playing online or even around the table. So that's Portrait Workshop. Get in now whilst you can and be part of the conversation. Their Discord is active where they're suggesting new props. They're suggesting all kinds of things in terms of what needs to be worked on next with regards to the software. As I said, it is still in beta, but it is something that is really, really useful if you use a lot of portraits in your games. Until next time, however, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.